Oh, I see, okay.
And if we're saying the soonest, she'll have to have that to you by Sunday, how does that feel for you?
That means I have to have it by Friday because I'm not here Saturday or Sunday.
Well,
I just think let's go with our Wednesday date. We've got plenty of time before the end of the month to get it advertised, and let's don't get in a hurry.
But it's gotta be advertised for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
We can do it. It can happen.
And even if
I
it's,
got
like I
space
said,
next
even if
week.
it slides,
And really, I mean, the RFP could just be a general RFP.
That's what I'm gonna do. Just
Yeah,
a real
just a
short.
general-
then you don't need to know the detail of the RFP, you just
No.
need to, okay, that's a whole different issue, you could probably give her that right now.
Because usually in RFP, aren't there, they can like.
I'm just gonna have them
contact-
request information from
Request the
me.
information, yeah.
Yeah, because it's too much to
Yeah.
print, and we pay per load, right? So I'm just gonna make the
Just a
publication
general-
really short, and then the,
Yep.
you know, the detailed packet. will
And as
be-
long as the Roundup Record has it by Friday, or Sunday, but of course, during the work week, you know. But then I do send it to Yellowstone County News,
Mhm.
and they usually send it back to me proofed and everything, so.
Okay,
That would be that's a very good source.
Yeah, that might be better than our roundup.
We have to do both.
where do y'all get your
Yeah.
proposals from then? I mean, I'm obviously gonna send it to you guys, to Randy, but
Right.
where do you, how do y'all?
We do a survey of local publications. There's a couple of websites where you can search for keywords, like we'll just search for RFP or RFQ, and it'll kind of do a survey of any local newspapers that are published online. For sometimes Billings Builders Exchange, there's there's this place with the State
It's a
Department.
state one, you know.
Yeah, where I can't remember if it's the State Department of Commerce or something else where you can post requests for services.
Yellowstone County News.
Mhm,
Okay.
That's who we
Yeah.
use.
Alright, well, that's good, then
That
we've
one
got it
comes out a
covered.
lot too, so.
Yeah, we check all of those weekly.
Can I
Excellent.
ask your names, please?
I'm Brad.
Brad?
Yep.
Brad, have a last name?
Brad does have a last name. It's Kaler, K-A-H-L-E-R.
K-A-H-L-E-R?
Yep.
And
Emery Skelton, E-M-A-R-I-E. Last name is Skelton, S-K-E-L-T-O-N.
And they're with Half Plains Architects. And they did send, so Eric sent the fully executed, AIA contract and the proof of insurance. I haven't looked at them yet, but.
I got the AI,
Do
one,
we need
but
to
I
sign
didn't
it
get the other.
No,
We already
y'all
did.
signed
No, I'll
it.
sign it and be sent.
Yeah. I just wanted you to know we had.
You don't
those.
know it, but you signed it.
In my sleep.
You
You
voted,
know we're on top of things when I said, did we sign that?
so you didn't get that.
I only got the
He-
signed contract, not the
He said
insurance.
you got the insurance, but not the contract? Well, that's
He
weird.
said he was still working on, in the email,
Well, I
it said he
thought,
was still
well,
working
let
on
me
it.
see what I got. I mean, I'm looking at your email.
He said he sent the contract, and you got that,
I got contract,
okay. And then he sent me separately the
insurance. and-
insurance, and he said I sent this to the commissioners, but maybe you weren't included, so I'll be sure you get that.
And Bob, I did not see where there was any,
Approval of that change?
yeah,
All right, let me resurrect it.
and send it to me, I didn't get any.
I will.
And might wanna tell them if they want a change order, they need to
I will.
let me know.
He should know that already.
Yeah.
Okay, Bonnie, I'm gonna forward this to you,
Okay.
because you're the one that really needs it, right?
Yep.
Not,
Right.
okay, that
So is this the one we were thinking we'd try and sneak in today?
Yes,
I'm gonna forward it to you.
okay. We did sneak it in today.
There's no such thing as sneaking anything in.
No,
Yeah,
well,
excuse me, very public.
when we put it on the, to sign the change
It was-
order
it
for
was the
Cotton
agenda
Construction.
as
We had public
amended.
comment and this is all public, so.
So, also, you did not do that during the business meeting. You did not approve to, or make a motion to sign it. You just made the motion, put it on the agenda.
Oh, I meant the agenda to be signed. That's what
But
you
we
did.
didn't do it part of the business, we only
That's what I
signed the
heard.
resolution, so.
And if we wanna wait a week, we can, but I don't see, I
Oh,
don't think
sure.
anything will change between now and then.
We'll do it after.
Okay, can we
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna pass this over to you guys then. She sent us all a,
I've got printed copies for everybody.
oh, thank you.
So this is just a quick agenda for, High Plains portion of this meeting
Excellent, thank you.
and a brief schedule, which will be, the second page is a project schedule, which will be updated for you guys each time
Sorry,
we meet with you.
Here, you need, can I give you these for the
Yeah.
record and after I use them? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And the first box, anytime we have a meeting, the first box on this table will stay pretty much the same. I'll go over the agenda briefly. The first box on the right, under minutes, we will update the contract status. And we'll keep you guys appraised of those kind of, fee milestones that you asked about, that were written into the agreement. So our agenda for today, we'll briefly go over the project budget and schedule, our quality control process. We'll talk briefly about the owner's project standards, just touch on I can only think of a very few points, that won't pertain for some time, not until the general contractor is selected, but just things that would be good for us on the design side to know. Touch on our project delivery method, which is defined, in the contract in our agreement. And then kind of the most important part is at the tail end of the meeting, communication standards, and, on the back of our agenda are the next steps, which kind of touches on the schedule a little bit. So moving back up to the top on the right, per our agreement, High Plains and the structural engineer that we have retained, who is Jim Schilke, who is already familiar with the building, will assess the existing conditions and help you guys prepare an RFQ, a request for qualifications, for qualified general contractors to assist in stabilizing the building and then progressively repairing it, the structural elements, as well as the portion of the roof that needs to be repaired and reframed slightly so that there will be a code compliant head height on the second floor. Our services are, there's a fixed fee of $33,500 to do that process, as well as High Plains will be checking in with the State Historic Preservation Office to make sure that the progress of this work conforms to the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic preservation, which means that the project will in the future be qualifiable for historic tax credits. And then the last step of the process that we're in an agreement with you guys for, both High Plains and our structural engineer, once the general contractor is selected and is underway in the building, will basically be on retainer for hourly design services, consultation basically as needed, as the contractor runs into, okay, I need a structural engineer to review, this beam replacement, this connection. That hourly process in our agreement, we agreed that if the total fee, both for architectural and structural design services during that hourly consultation phase exceeds $25,000, we will let you guys know.
Right.
And we'll give you fee updates as we move through that process.
So that'll be on your agenda, Emery, in
Yes.
future meetings where we are.
Yep, always in this
That's-
top right-hand box.
And the point of that was, all right, we've spent $25,000 in hourly consulting with the contractor. Do we think we're X% done or Y% done?
Yes.
Okay.
And I
that's
believe
awesome.
in our agreement, once we have the contractor on board, once we've gone through the RFQ process and selected a contractor and have them as a team member, we'll agree on a schedule for meetings to keep you guys appraised of the project progress and the fee progress.
Okay, very good.
Similarly, there are some reimbursable expenses. A lot of mine and Brad's trip today to see the building is reimbursable travel expense. But those reimbursable expenses are billed to the county separately. I think we gave you guys an estimated range in the agreement. As reimbursable expenses approach the $2,000 and $3,000 mark, we'll keep you guys appraised, and if reimbursable expenses approach the $3,000 mark, we'll talk about it. We'll kind of assess how many more trips and that kind of thing we think we're looking at.
Just out of curiosity, are those sort of a pass-through cost?
Yes,
Yeah, you guys aren't marking those up or
No.
anything? That's just,
we use
just so everybody
receipts.
understands, it's like,
Pass through meaning,
meaning that they'll just charge us mileage or whatever.
Yeah,
and
mileage.
They're not gonna mark them up. They're just, basically whatever the architect spends, he's just passing it through
Yeah.
us.
Just a direct handover, there's no markup.
Right,
No market.
and that's for things like printing, postage, rental cars, that kind of stuff. So our schedule is the second sheet that I handed you.
Okay?
And in the email that I sent this to Teresa, I noted that the lines in gray on that schedule are dates that we would meet with you guys. So you can see we have 2 more meetings scheduled before, not officially scheduled, not date selected yet, but projected before we issue an RFQ. And then the third line highlighted in gray would be after the RFQ has been issued, and that's for the general contractor. If the general contractor is not selected within 5 days of the RFQ being issued, then kind of the rest of the timeline moves to the right. Brad and mine's work today will enable us to prepare drawings of the building suitable to be included in the RFQ for the contractor. We will also meet with our structural engineer to kind of put together a plan, a concept plan for the work to the roof and the work to stabilize the building that will be included in the RFQ. And that's basically, it'll become part of the RFQ as something for contractors to reference so that they can really understand the scope of the work. And then we will meet with you guys in January to review that proposed scheme. We will input any comments after that meeting and draft the RFQ. And then we will meet with you guys again, I think we have it like 2 weeks later, to review the draft of the RFQ, again, get any comments from the county about that RFQ, and then I think I gave us a little more than a week after that meeting to pick up any changes and then publicly issue the RFQ for contractors. And once that's issued, it's a pretty tight timeline, and again, we can decide, you know, we can give contractors more than 2 weeks to respond, give them 3 maybe. Talk about scheduling a walkthrough of the building before the RFQ responses are done. That's a really important piece. And we will be posting that RFQ, just like you guys were talking about for your RFQ for a developer. We'll post it publicly. We will also send it to a couple of contractors just to make sure that it's on their radar. And then the end of the RFQ process, you guys, High Plains will participate with you guys to review responses to the RFQ, and you guys will select a general contractor based on the RFQ responses. Once the general contractor is selected, the design team will have a meeting with the general contractor to review the work plan and make any recommendations to the county if the general contractor thinks that there are things, you know, hey, this would be safer if, or hey, it might be more cost effective if. And then the general contractor will get to work stabilizing the building, progressively kind of jacking it up so things get level. It'll have to rest, you know, for a few days, and then the structural engineer in High Plains will probably return to the site to look at where things sit and decide how we're going to progressively replace and repair any members that need repairing. So ideally, the repair and re-roofing project will occur really from kind of the end of March through the end of May is what's projected on the schedule right now. Again, that might get pushed out a little bit if we don't get the RFQ out by the first or second week of February, or if general contractor responses, like we might have a lot of great interest, but ooh, hey, we can't start until April. You know, we don't really know how to predict that right now.
Yeah, okay, that's excellent. So we're basically saying, hey, by the end of May, which this is an aggressive schedule, we'll be ready for, in the parallel, we'll be bringing a developer on board. We'll be ready for that the building will be ready for the developer to purchase, I guess. I mean, and the only thing that something kind of jumped out at me is we're looking to have this general contractor take on the roofer as a subcontractor. Is there any thought to maybe having that as an alternate?
So that was one of the things I was gonna ask, is that when we do the RFQ, if we could have that as the roofing as an alternate. And in one of our grants, their requirement, when I asked about this alternative delivery method, they said as long as the contractor that's selected through this method competitively bids any subcontractors, then that will not violate any Montana codes.
Mhm.
So, but I know when we've like dealt with, it's not T.W. Clark and T.W. Ridley in the past, when he did his estimate on roofing, it was so much higher than, or the guy that did the temporary roof for us. So we would just wanna have the option to be able to competitively bid the roof. So does that sound like a good approach for you guys to like do the roofing work as an alternate?
Well, it's, the funds are federal funds, correct?
No,
No? Okay, so,
they're state.
yeah, then that would probably be a good idea, yeah.
We just want,
We do have-
we just want competition on the roofing bids is really what it amounts to.
Right. We do have to do prevailing wages, so that needs to be in the RFQ. We don't have to do Davis Bacon because it's not federal.
Yep.
So we just need to ensure that we have that option to competitively bid, that one piece. And if whatever contractor is selected decides to sub out things, we need that competitively bid, which I know that could be not appealing for them.
Most of the general contractors I could think of that we would invite to respond competitively bid all their subcontractors anyway.
Awesome.
But we can absolutely write into the RFQ that the general contractor's price for roofing is presented as an alternate, and that the client has the option to
Excellent.
reject that and competitively bid that individual scope.
The
Okay.
problem we had, like with the fairgrounds on getting competitive bids, is there were no interested subcontractors.
Yeah.
And so they only had one bid, and of course it was outrageous,
Mhm.
and so we had to say, forget it. You know,
Yeah.
We'll put it out again later.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have seen that in a lot of rural communities.
Mhm.
I will say that roofers seem to be one that you can get at least two bids.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good.
And our,
Well, and being this close to Billings too, I mean, you're gonna,
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you shouldn't have any problem getting interest in roofing numbers.
no, I agree.
You guys we have a phase 2 report for the building, correct?
Yes,
Did they test the roof?
yes.
It's-
Okay.
There's no asbestos in the roof.
Sweet.
It was
We were hoping there was, it would have meant we'd have got more Brownsfield
Well,
money.
Brownsfield, because the nice thing with Brownsfield is if they're required to abate the roof, they're also required to replace it.
Yes.
Yeah, we thought
That's what we were hoping for.
Yeah.
And we actually had paid a
I said, "Where's
second
the asbestos on the
survey to
roof? Where's
come
the
do that and say, "I hope he finds it," and he didn't. He found
Check
nothing.
over here.
Yeah, what about this corner right here?
That just means that the old stuff that's there is too old. Because
Yeah, it could be.
there's a time period where asbestos was in almost everything, and
Mhm.
certainly like
Yeah.
mastics and bitumen and that kind of stuff. But when your existing material like predates 1920, 1918, you don't tend to see it, which is really
Really?
interesting. Yeah.
So while we're on hazmat, can we just share with you, so the thoughts that we have about the approach to the cleanup with that southwest corner being in the state that it's in, is if we can get the clean, and they're willing, Snowy Mountain and the cleanup team that we've worked with in the past, said that they're willing to face the cleanup, where they clean up the entire building of the flaking lead-based paint and the asbestos, except in the glaze for like on the windows, so we don't jeopardize his, historic preservation opportunities. So get that done before a contractor's in there cleaning up the build, or working on the structural, and then once, maybe during the resting period, they could, once it's stabilized. So I talked to Jim Schilke, and he said, let's just be in conversation. Once we get everything leveled, we'll assess it then, we'll figure out when it's safest for a cleanup team to get in there. Is that okay with you guys from your perspective of being in a building that's not cleaned up?
Yes, Brad and I are fully equipped with personal protective equipment today, including respirators and disposable like onesies. I think the most important thing in terms of scheduling abatement is that the general contractor will not send laborers in there if there's hot, friable material.
Okay,
They require the owner to take care of that scope because obviously, they can't put their employees at risk. But I think the schedule that I've heard you guys talking about abatement sounds good, and what you just described, having the cleanup team come and get, you know, all of the asbestos out, as much of the lead-based paint as they can. Contractors they're a lot more sensitive to asbestos, especially friable asbestos, than they are lead-based paint, just because the hazard is so much higher. So the friable asbestos should definitely be priority. But also, every general contractor that we've worked with, that's ever done any historic work before, they understand the nature of like, okay, abatement is a separate contract, we will coordinate with them, we'll coordinate our schedule.
Well, and, you know, also with a majority of the structural work happening in that one, you know, corner, you could basically just talk to the abatement company and say, we want this portion of the building abated first, and then you can move into the other portions. That way, abatement and structural reinforcement can be happening simultaneously.
We got a little chicken and the egg going there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Is
concerned
it
about.
safe to go, it's not structurally sound, so it's not safe to go and abate, so we kinda looked at that, okay?
Yeah.
And we looked at the types of things that will be needed to be done to stabilize the building are not in direct conflict with asbestos, but you're probably gonna have to wear a respirator, you know.
Yeah, anybody kind of shoring things up and doing some of the leveling will most likely have to be suited up.
Yeah, then
So is
once-
that acceptable to, I'm sorry, Bob.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Is that acceptable to a contractor, that when they're doing the shoring and leveling, cause there is some friable asbestos in the southwest corner.
Yeah.
They'll
They'll
I don't know
typically
that-
account for that in their costs.
Yeah, they will appreciate knowing it up front.
Yeah.
But I think the way that we write the request for qualification for general contractors will make sure that like gets its own paragraph, so that
Mhm.
everybody is aware and
Okay.
everybody knows.
And we don't wanna overstate it either, because when we actually looked at it,
Yeah,
there's friable asbestos, it's mainly in the form of pipe insulation, which maybe they
Yeah.
won't even touch when they're shoring.
yeah, it's like in a stack, it's
Yeah.
right there on the shelf in a stack.
Yeah,
And-
but if they don't go and kick the sack, they'll be okay. But still, I still think they probably need to have a respirator on, because it's not been abated. And then once there's a point where it's safe enough for an abatement team to get in there,
Yeah.
they'll get it out of the way, and then maybe they can finish some.
Well, and just from my personal experience in the building the last time I was up here is like I was in there 15 minutes with a respirator on and no goggles, and my eyes were burning after the first half hour.
Really, because of what?
Just the asbestos.
Well, maybe,
Really?
And anything in the air, and I'm not super hypersensitive to that
Yeah,
stuff either.
yeah.
So
it may be mold.
I would've never
Well, I
guessed.
think it's the mold jumped out at me,
Yeah.
and we haven't even talked about that, but in my mind, that's why I was in that basement, and I know mold can be bad stuff.
The good thing, and I don't know if I've shared this with y'all, the temporary roof has been on there it's been in the dry for over 2 weeks, probably over that.
so we don't have a standing puddle on the
You
second
don't
floor.
have a lake to swim in.
I couldn't
Yeah.
get
Oh, that's
within 12
right.
feet of that column because there was 12 inches of water on the second floor.
On the
Really?
second
No
floor,
water.
we were there in the down
There's a
floor.
lake.
Oh, okay.
Brett's photos, it
That
does look
sounds
like.
I've got video of a waterfall just cascading down that column line
Oh my
into the
goodness
basement.
sakes.
It was wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh my
And when was
God,
this?
I didn't know it was that.
That massive rainstorm, 3 weeks ago? It was literally the week before the roof got dried in.
Yeah.
We were up
Yeah.
here the week before that, and there was a 12-inch lake on the second floor where the
Of course,
first
it doesn't take much rain to become.
No, because it's all directed to that one
Think of
valley.
the weight of
But
it.
we had
Oh.
hard rain.
it was a lot of rain that
Well,
day.
there was. I mean,
Yeah.
just the weight alone. I'm sitting here going,
So it is drier, so today,
Okay.
maybe there won't be that,
I'm gonna-
but it's not.
we're gonna be probing beams and columns, and yeah, it's gonna be good.
We brought a 3D scanner that we're gonna use in the work area, and we're actually pretty excited to see what the actual slope of the floor is.
Oh, yeah.
Because it'll be able to give us a better measurement than just like a 4-foot level or something like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, it'll pick up the deflections and everything, so we'll be able to read
Wow.
the difference in the floor lines and.
So Teresa, I'm gonna add a note, kind of moving down into we've talked about the schedule, we've talked about our budget and the regular updates we'll make to the status. Our quality control checklist, I will likely send you next week.
Okay.
We need to kind of, because this is a different scope of project, we need to kind of edit it a little bit. But it basically kind of does a side-by-side listing of the reports and documents that we'll be producing, as well as the meetings that we will schedule and have with you guys. It's really kind of a distillation of our architectural agreement. we're kind of talking about owner's building standards in terms of what the RFQ needs to include, what the process is gonna look like with abatement and
Okay.
stabilization happening simultaneously. So Teresa, I'm gonna make a note, if you will, I'll shoot you an email as a reminder, but if you will send High Plains any information you already know that's gonna be required for the RFQ relative to the types of funds that are being used, like, yes, state prevailing wage, yes, confirm the county would like to see roofing as a alternate,
Mhm.
to be considered, following up with that kind of
Certainly.
information. Other things that we thought of that might impact how we draft the RFQ, because we're gonna start drafting the RFQ hopefully before New Year's, just kind of getting an outline put together. So, does the owner have any, site use and staging requirements? I'm not as familiar with the site as Brad is. I believe there's some space between the building and the alley. Obviously, it's a Main Street building though. General contractors are very familiar with, working with MDT, working with, local cities, getting sidewalk closure permits and that kind of stuff. But if there's any specific language that the county wants written into the RFQ for how the contractor will manage the site, that would be good to know.
Dumpster locations, preferences for them parking their work vehicles, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you would, if you would prefer to have that back alley area like fenced off and have temporary fencing to
Keep
help
people-
secure the building as people are going in and out, that sort of thing.
Right, and a lot of times in an RFQ, what you'll see is that they request that the general contractor submit a site management plan, where it's like, hey, here's the lot, here's where we're gonna propose temporary
Right.
fencing, so.
Let's pull that thread a little bit. Is the city gonna have some requirements that maybe that's what's really gonna govern what? There's the lots,
I would get
we're
it
thinking
over.
we might buy the lots, but that process has got its own
That's gotta go.
pathway. But right now, the only staging would be in the back.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could quarter off the whole thing, I think it'd be easier for a general contractor.
I don't know, alley access, you can't block alley access,
No, I
can
was
you?
You can't block the alley, but,
You can use part of it,
well, they can use it to access the site, but
Yeah.
they can't physically block it.
All right.
so that back, the city has, part of our agreement, when we got that first structural assessment that was so bleak and that let's tear the whole building down, perspective, was that we put, he just thought that back southwest corner was just gonna collapse. So we put, the accommodation he made with the building owner was that we put temporary fence on up there that restricted access to the back portion of the building closest to the southwest corner. So that was the city's requirement, and they're happy with that.
So I think I'm hearing as long as you stay on the property, you're okay, but you can't go into the alley. You can access through the alley, but I was just pulling that thread to think if we had, now I'm putting my contractor's hat on. How am I gonna stage for this project?
So that's what the roofers did, they parked their vehicles right there in the fenced off area behind the building.
Right.
Even though that's the hazardous area if the southwest corner was to collapse. But I think now that we've got the roof covered and
Yeah,
it's drying out, Jim doesn't feel like it's gonna go anywhere on us.
right, I think the RFQ, including like photos and